You know, when I arrived in Arizona with my family, we were probably the only Koreans in the whole state. I remember thinking, man, we are such oddballs here. And I never knew I was even Korean until I was in Arizona, because people just didn't talk about your race when I lived in Maryland. But I remember suddenly hearing kids calling me chink and Chinaman and doing slant eyes. And not only the kids, but the parents as they saw us passing in cars. You know, thank God that I had a mom that was really unique. Anybody have like an embarrassing mom? Anybody here? Yeah, if you have a Korean mom, you probably have an embarrassing mom. My mom was only about 5 foot high. Do we have a picture of her somewhere? Maybe show a picture of my mom. And so she was about 5 foot tall, and she was the life of every party. She was a contrarian. Wasn't the normal Korean type of person in America where you think they'd be more demure and shy and not wanting to be that loud. My mom was the total opposite of that. She had no concern about what people thought about her. So she would act and be herself, and she would laugh loudly in all public places, to the point that she would even fall in the middle of the floor in the mall because she would laugh so hard and curl in a ball and shake. And I remember we would just scatter as children, acting like, who in the world is that woman? But then we're the only Koreans in the whole mall. So it's obvious, like, that's our mom. I remember my mom taking us into a store named Sears. Some of you probably heard about it. I'm not sure if you still have them in Seattle area, but Sears is this old department store. And in this one section of the store where they were shopping for me, it was called the Husky Boy section. Think about that. It's already bad enough you're a big kid, and now you have to go into the Husky Boy section. And so we were going to the Husky Boy section. It was so embarrassing. And my mom was looking for, some clothes for me. And in this area of the Husky Boy section, these colors only came these clothes only came in colors not known to nature. Okay, it was that bad. And so she finally found a shirt for me, and she called the salesman over and said, okay, how much is this shirt? And he'd go, oh, that's $25. My mom would say, I give you 10. I said, Mom, this is not Korea, please. You are embarrassing us. This is so wrong. I remember we would go to like the best place after church. In Arizona, there was this restaurant known as Royal Fork. It was all-you-can-eat buffet restaurant. And it was the most economical place to take the Gibbons boys, because my brother was, he's a little bit younger than me, but he was getting bigger in terms of muscular build. He was bodybuilding. So his legs were like the size of my waist. And at that time, I was about 30 pounds heavier. I was playing football. And so we were just getting massively big. So that, again, to kind of handle their grocery bills, they would just make sure we eat as much as possible, but take us to this buffet restaurant. So after church, we just head there. And it was a competition between my brother and I. We would just eat as much as we could, and we stacked the plates, right? And as high as we could. There'd be literally 20, 30 plates high, and everybody in the restaurant's just looking at us consume food. And you know how it is when you get really full. Have you seen those old Korean guys? What happens is when they get really full, they just kind of kick back, and they take deep breath, and then they unbutton their top button, let their roll hang out. So my brother and I saw that. We go, oh man, yeah, let's do that. So we just kind of kick back, let our roll hang out, and just sit there and go, oh man, isn't this the best? I mean, we have all this great food, prime rib, fried chicken, meatloaf. This is so awesome. And then in that moment, I remember my little mom quietly getting up and scooting over to the buffet table again. We go, what in the world is she doing? She then gets like these plates, and then she goes to the fried chicken, and she just starts piling on fried chicken. And we go, what's Mom doing? And everybody's looking at her too. She then comes to the table, and we go, Mom, what are you doing? And has your mom ever done this where you're talking to her, but she acts like you're not even there? My mom paid no attention to us, our concerns. She then proceeds, and I'm not kidding you, she takes a big napkin, puts it on her lap, and piles the chicken on the napkins, and then folds it all up, and then stuffs it in her purse. And I said, Mom, you can't do this, man. It says on the buffet line, please don't take any food home. Mom, you're embarrassing us. But then my brother and I would go home and we eat all the chicken. So my mom would embarrass us all the time. And she was so much fun. And it's unusual because if you knew my mom's past, it wasn't easy. She grew up, during the Korean War, and she had to deal with all the bombs blowing up around her, she told me, when she was a little girl. She had to deal with an alcoholic father. They're just trying to survive. It was a tough time in Korea. But not only was he an alcoholic, he was abusive. And so she saw her mom get abused, and eventually when she was a young teenager, she ran away. And she partnered up with a Korean rock soldier, and she had my sister. Well, that man also was an alcoholic. And my mom was scared that he was gonna hurt my sister. And so eventually my mom took off and left him. She came back to Jeonju and near Seoul, and she started just hustling. She started cutting hair, GI's hair, soldiers, anybody. She started selling things. And that's when eventually, she met her dream guy. It was like the heroes of the Korean War, the American soldiers. My dad was a sergeant, in the Air Force with his blues on and all these little cool things on his lapels and on his suit. When she saw him, they connected and they fell in love. And then I was born in Seoul, Korea, on the base near Itaewon there. And there I was, man, and I was this big old baby. And I remember they showed pictures of me. I can't show you because they didn't cover me up. And there's like rolls and rolls of fat. I mean, I looked like the Michelin man, right? I was this huge baby, but my mom was so proud of me that she had this baby boy. And eventually then we came to the States. My mom, she just worked hard. I remember seeing these big varicose veins on her legs because she would stand all day cutting people's hair. She got so good that she started cutting like the celebrities' hairs in Arizona, and the governor of Arizona's wife hair. So she had a ton of friends because she was a vivacious, beautiful woman. She had that personality that had a lot of charisma. That's why it was so hard. When I remember thinking, man, I have the perfect family. I've never even saw my parents fight. But then one time I came home, it was my sophomore year, and I remember coming home and I saw 3 police cars outside my house. And this was unusual because this is a nice suburban neighborhood near Phoenix and Tempe. And I walk up befuddled saying, what's going on here? The officers are walking around and I look inside the Blazer that my mom had bought my dad because she would buy my dad cars all the time. Every couple of years she'd buy him a new car. That's how she showed her generosity, her love, was by buying my dad things. I look inside the car, and my mom's in the back seat. She has a knife, and she's just ripping the seats apart. I look at her face, and it's traumatized. Tears are streaming down, and mascara is all over the place. She reminded me, remember that picture, the black and white of the Vietnam girl who's naked running through the streets? The trauma on that girl's face, it was like my mom's face. So I was horrified to see how distraught she was. I said, Mom, what are you doing? Come out of the car, get out. And she wouldn't come out. The policeman tried to coax her out, she just wouldn't come out. We called our pastor and we thought she would respect him, and she did. When he came, she opened the door and fell into his arms. She limped with him as they were walking by me. I said, Mom, what happened? What are you doing? And she said, Dave, your father had an affair. And I said, Mom, Dad would never do that. I mean, come on, he would never do that. He's a leader at the big church, and I've never seen you guys fight. Dad would never do that. She goes, I hired a detective. I know he did. My dad then comes up in his car like right after that with a lawyer, and that was kind of odd for me. And I walked up to my dad, and he's starting to pass me by to go inside the house, and I said, Father, I said, hey, Mom said that you had an affair. Is that true? He looked at me and said, Dave, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I believed him. They started to work out their marriage, trying to come back together, but it wasn't working. But, I tried to, still work out with my dad because, of course, he's telling the truth. He said, Dave, hey, how about washing my car? This is months later. How about washing my car? I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. So I'm there washing his car. I'm finishing up. I'm in the driver's side. Underneath the mat, I'm trying to vacuum, and then I see a card, and I pull it out, and I look at the card, and it says, Love, Carolyn. My mom's American name was Debbie. I remember slowly just putting that card right back underneath the mat, finished drying up everything, and I walked inside the house slowly with my head down, and I closed the door, and this big 200-plus pound football player guy just started crying like a baby. I said, how in the world could my own dad lie to me? And he's a Christian. I had such a hatred for my dad. It got to the point that I didn't talk to him for a long time. Months passed by, he pulls me aside and said, Dave, you're not talking to me, what's going on? Why aren't you talking to me? I looked at him and said, you should know. He goes, I don't know. I said, Dad, come on, you should know. I don't know. I go, remember that day you asked me to wash the car? I found a card from Carolyn. And then he looked at me and said, well, you know, everybody makes mistakes. I didn't say anything, but in my heart, I said, that's not good enough. And I just walked away from him and did not talk to him. The Bible in Matthew chapter 18, you find a guy by the name of Peter who's very emotional. And he's getting close to Jesus. And as he approaches Jesus, he thinks he has like this answer and this question at the same time. He poses this really unique question. And he says, Jesus, how many times must I forgive a man who has sinned against me? Not just any sin, but sinned against me. And then he answers the question. It's like being a good student. Like you want to show how smart you are almost. He asks the question, then he gives an answer and says, 7? What a great answer. It's a very thoughtful response because anybody that knew the Jewish law knew that you're supposed to at least do it 3 times. So he multiplied it times 2, 6, and he added 1 for good measure. It said 7? So he was probably thinking, man, I got the answer. This is a really good one. And then Jesus shocks him and says, actually, Peter, it's 70 times 7. So does it then mean at the 491st time, it's okay then to not forgive? No. No, if you study grammar, you study syntax of language like in the Greek, at that moment, there was a hyperbole that was being used. Essentially, Jesus was saying, forgiveness should be limitless. You should never stop forgiving. You know, there's been the crossing of the Red Sea, the raising of Lazarus from the dead, lepers get healed. We've seen blind people see again. But do you know the greatest miracle, whether it's from the beginning of time to this day? You know what the greatest miracle is? It is this: forgiveness when someone's betrayed you or has hurt you, talk behind your back, or just lie to your face and act like everything's cool when it's not cool. It reminds me of this really beautiful passage. You know, my favorite book of the Bible, like I shared last night, is the book of Genesis. And then probably one of my favorite passages is John chapter 8, because it's so human. And he elevates a woman that's been caught in, the Bible says, the very act of sin, like we read. So imagine this. Jesus is eloquently teaching at the temple. And I just imagine sitting there, man. Can you imagine Jesus as a teacher? Can you imagine just being mesmerized by this young man who has such wisdom? He's just pouring out. So he was gathering, literally thousands of people would follow him. And so he's teaching eloquently to a crowd. And suddenly it's interrupted by a group of religious people. And they caught, the Bible says, a woman in the very act of adultery. So I don't know what that exactly means, but my guess is she was having relations with somebody in a moment, and so she was caught doing it. That's what I'm assuming. So my assumption is that maybe she's not even fully clothed at this point. And then these religious people throw her at Jesus' feet, and they test Jesus. Jesus, This woman has been caught in the very act of adultery. And you know what the law says. What do you think we should do about it? Interestingly enough, Jesus acts counter to many Christians today. For many of us think we just need to preach something, we gotta give them a Bible verse, we gotta say something really unique and wise and cool, but Jesus doesn't say anything. He just goes to the ground and he starts writing. The Greek word is graphe. We don't know what graphe literally means in that moment. It could be some type of lettering, it could be drawing or doodling. We don't know for sure, but he definitely was doing something with his finger in the ground. And as he's going into the ground, he's writing something, he then stands up and they're waiting because they're trying to trap him. What's Jesus gonna do? Is he gonna obey the law? And everybody's gonna see this, that he's not a respecter of the law. Then Jesus, and I'm thinking, remember at the same time, this woman's right in front of him. And my guess is she's shaking because the Jewish law said if you catch a woman in adultery, she should be stoned. And if you've ever seen a Middle East stoning, they're not pretty. They're not like with little rocks. They will take like boulders and throw them on the victims. It's ugly, it's horrifying, it's traumatizing anybody that would witness such an act. So Jesus is writing and he stands up and they're pressing him and they're angry and they're trying to trap him. They go, we got him. And then Jesus says the profound statement that's heard all throughout the world. Most people, even people who are not Christians, know this. He says that famous line, let him who's without sin, go ahead, throw the first stone. And the Bible then says he gets back on the ground and starts writing again. Some people conjecture that as he's writing on the ground that he's probably writing the sins of all the men that have the stones in their hand. The next thing you hear silence, and then you hear the dropping of rocks, thump, thump, thump. As each man is dropping the rocks, then it's hitting the ground, and you can then hear the shuffling of the feet and the murmuring as they're walking away because they didn't do it. They didn't trap Jesus. If it's a movie scene, all the men have evacuated away. It's almost like it's dark all around. I can see like a light shining down upon Jesus, bending now to the woman who's shaking and trembling because she thought she was gonna die. And I can see Jesus coming close to her and say, and the Bible says this, where are your accusers? They're not here, Lord. Did anyone condemn you? No one, Lord. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. I get chills every time I say that. That is so beautiful and powerful. It reminds me of this wonderful Jesuit nun who's a scientist and a theologian. Her name is Ilia Delio, and she's written a fantastic book that no one will ever buy because they won't like the title. It's called The Humility of God. I mean, you're gonna buy a book like that? And then it has a horrible cover, but for some reason I thought, man, that's an interesting looking book. And I think my friend told me to read that, and so I read it, and inside all the hundreds of pages, I found this one quote that was worth it all. And then she said in this one page, the love of God is like a waterfall. It never stops. I remember reading that and I just started weeping. I was like, I can't believe that's true. God's love is that good. No matter what I do, his love just keep coming. It's not gonna stop. When you think about forgiveness, you have to ask yourself, well, what is it essentially? Because if you look at the etymology of the word, you see at the middle part of it, it's the word give. It has this idea of charis, meaning generosity or favor or grace. So it's you giving grace to someone. We know when you really look at this, forgiveness actually recognizes that there's a gap. There's a disparity between what the person's done and how it's hurt you. And that there's no way they can actually pay you back for the harm that's occurred to you. So there's this huge gap. Their wrongdoing, and then them saying I'm sorry, there's this huge gap. It still doesn't cover, no matter what they say, it's not gonna fill this hole or the abuse that I've experienced because of you. So forgiveness recognizes that. It doesn't just cover it up and say, oh yeah, this is no big deal. I'll just forget about it. No. Forgiveness is recognizing the fact, yeah, it's a huge gap. But there's grace. See, grace fills the in-between. It's not like evil for evil, like a lot of us think. Someone's gonna yell at me, I'll yell back at you. You've done this to me, so here you go. No, that's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is, even though there's a wrong done, you're demonstrating grace. You're letting love like a waterfall just keep flowing. It's really hard. That's why it's a miracle, because we don't really understand the capacity of that unless you really know God. Because to know God is to know love. That's what 1 John talks about. So it recognizes the gap. And then the second thing about forgiveness that's really deep is it releases a person from like a judgment. Because usually we're very judgmental, right? Look at our culture. I mean, even amongst here, you have Republicans and you have Democrats. And around our dinner tables, we don't want to talk about that, or we don't even want to talk about it in church, politics. But the truth is, we have some major animosity towards the other side, whatever the other side is. We can't even stand to be around them. Some people worship and they revere Charlie Kirk, others do not, and say, are you kidding me? You know, other people don't really think Black Lives Matter. Others do. I mean, how do you talk to people who you disagree with and who are mean towards you or even angry? How do you deal with like the stuff of racism or some type of betrayal in your home where you've had literally parents or you had brothers and sisters or really close friends that hurt you? What are you gonna do about that? Are you just gonna live with that the rest of your life? So forgiveness, what it does is you look at it, it gives us a way out. That there's a way out of this, that you don't have to keep living under the toxicity of this. You know, T.D. Jakes says like forgiveness or unforgiveness is like, you know, you being this person who actually is the one drinking the poison, wishing the other person's dead. But you're the one actually killing yourself. Forgiveness not only releases a person from judgment, even though we don't feel like it. It's not about feeling, it's just like, you know, resetting your mind, saying, you know, I'm gonna give grace, even though I don't feel like it. I'm gonna treat the person like they've never done it. Even though I know it's there, I'm gonna give grace to this moment, not hold it against them. But you know, what I saw with John 8 is the third component of forgiveness is protection, which is really interesting to me. Because usually if someone does something wrong, you want it fully exposed. Everybody should know, but you find Jesus, he's protecting this woman from all these guys, especially the religious people. And don't forget this, the religious people tend to be most violent. That's why right now, if you see whatever political side there is, if there's just like violence or anger on whatever side, that's not from God. There may be some just points you have, but the way you describe things, if it's not with like a spirit of love and forgiveness, then you're not represented, just straight up. It always has this posture, if you look at Jesus' life, of gentleness and humility. That's Jesus. You know, so he's protecting her. It's a beautiful portrait of someone who's done something wrong, obviously, but he's protecting them, especially from the religious people. So forgiveness is that. It's like there's a gap, it's a release from judgment, and then you're protecting people. But it's this overflow of love. It doesn't mean you feel it, but you do it. And I know what you're saying, oh man, that's so hard, bro. I mean, come on, pastor, what's up with that? I mean, but I get it in church, it's really nice little thought, but how do you really get there? So I've dealt with this so much. I travel to different parts of the world. I've dealt with many different conflicts. I deal with Muslims, I deal with Buddhists, I work with Republicans, I work with Democrats. I mean, I have friends on both sides. I work with the gay community, I work with transgender, I work with a lot of different people because I'm trying just to love them. But I've come up with some principles, I think, that are biblical that you can probably apply to whatever situation you're in with someone you're having struggles with, forgiving. What are these principles that are so critical for us to really move it forward? When I look at these, there's 4 of them, all right? Check it out. Number 1, you have to see your own challenges. You see, for those people to drop their rocks, they had to see their own sin. So just imagine if you're judging on somebody, all of a sudden you have this digital board on your forehead, and suddenly your sin starts popping up. You know, it just goes in big red letters, this is your sin. If you knew your sin was being identified on your forehead as you're judging somebody, you probably wouldn't have as much energy. You'd probably be a little bit more humble. So one way you can release some of that bad and negative energy is you see your own sin. That's what John 8 is. They saw their own sin. They go, yeah, we can't judge her. See, that's gonna help when there's different partisan beliefs. They're very different, but they probably have sound reasoning on both sides why they are the way they are. We don't agree, and it seems really ridiculous, but you know what? I respect them, but I don't respect what they say in terms of their belief. I respect them as a human. Because when you dehumanize someone, that's when you move to really dangerous places in relationships and in social networks. So the first thing is really critical is you see your own challenges. Number two, I found, is see the child in the person. The reason why I got this so practical, when I was struggling with my dad, literally I had a counselor come up to me. He goes, "Wait, what are you dealing with?" I go, "My dad, I have trouble with him." And he goes, "Well, what's your dad's first name?" I said, "His name is Gary." As soon as I said it, I go, "He's Gary. He's just Gary. Gary." Why was I struggling so much? Because he's dad. He should know better. See, I forgot that he's a human. He's not perfect. That kind of calmed some of my emotional angst down. And I asked God that. I said, "Would you give me your eyes for my father? Because obviously you see my dad way different than I do." And literally when I did that, I saw my father like a child who lost his dad when he was young and was raised by brothers and a mother, and they lived in poverty just outside of Detroit in Flint, Michigan. When you see a person like a child, not just their authoritative position, some of that energy just kind of diminishes. The third thing I do is I pray a cleansing prayer. It's a really important piece because when someone does something against you or they say something against you, you know what it's like? It's like someone sliming you or throwing up on you. It's like, ugh, I just got all this stuff on me. And it's like you can't shake it. It's on your clothes. It's just starting to smell like all this bad stuff that happened to you that you didn't choose. So you know what you have to do at night? I do it regularly. In the evening usually, or when I'm thinking about during the day. I just say, "God, wash all this stuff off of me. All the negative stuff that they said or these feelings I have, just wash it off of me inside and out." And every time I do it, I get chills on my body. Because your words are prayers, they have power to it. Just try it. You'll go, "Whoa, I feel good." You'll feel clean. You have to take a spiritual bath on a regular basis. God, wash this off of me. And David even prayed those prayers in the Psalms, just cleanse me from these things. The fourth thing that I didn't put up, by the way, we'll go to the fourth that was supposed to be, but the fourth thing I want to add, because it's a C, is stay curious. Keep curious with your mind, okay? I added it when I was walking this morning. I go, yeah, that's another key thing that helped me, because you know what happens when you get really angry? You send less oxygen to your brain. Studies show that you get 30 to 35% oxygen on a normal basis. When you go under stress and anxiety and anger, you only get like 5% oxygen to your brain. That's why we say ridiculous things to one another. And we regret what we said because we got so angry. Because you have less oxygen going to your brain. You can't think. Your oxygen's going to other places in your body, to your legs and to your arms, to either fight or to run away. If you stay curious and go, "Hey, why are they saying this? They must be going through something really bad, or they must have a trauma, they got triggered." And you ask questions, "Hey, I'm noticing you're really hurting right now, or I offended you. Tell me how you're feeling and what happened." It really positions you differently. See, a lot of us never even saw this with our families. We never saw them resolve conflict. Some people just hit it, like my parents. Others, they just fought and were angry and they never dealt with it. So for most of us, we never saw healthy conflict resolution. So that's why some of these very practical things that's been proven over time really helps. Just stay curious. Don't get judgmental. It helps you to hang out with them and to try to coexist with them without getting so violent and then all getting hung up yourself. The last thing that's the most important one to me is what we talked about last night. It's an untethering from the toxicity of unforgiveness. You know what it is? It's the word blessing. It's the martial arts move of God. It's when someone curses you and they kind of fling something at you, you take their negative energy and you turn it back around and you put it into a blessing. What that does, you know what, more than anything, it heals you. It doesn't exist in you anymore. You're taking that negative energy and you say, I'm going to transform that into positive. So God, would you bless them with resources? Would you bless them with wisdom? Would you bless them with healing, with the way they're getting triggered right now? Just bless them. Again, you may not feel it, you just do it. And what happens is you're developing a spiritual muscle because you're made in the image of God, you actually have a muscle to forgive. It's in your spiritual DNA. You just have to activate it, like exercise it. You'll get stronger and stronger. I was thinking as I was getting ready for this message, today is almost the 34th anniversary. Or is it 34? Yeah, 34 years. It was October 6th, 1981. I was a sophomore in college and I was walking across the campus. My roommate came running up to me and says, you have to call home, something happened. I rushed back to the room because we didn't have cell phones at the time. There was like this one phone in our dormitory. And I run back to the room and my sister answers the phone, Chong. I said, Chong, what's wrong? She's crying. And she can't stop crying. She tries to talk, but then she starts crying again. And then finally she gets it out. Dave, Mama got killed last night in a hit and run accident. A drunk driver hit her. That was 34 years ago tonight. I remember suddenly everything seemed to stop. I felt like I was in an alternative universe, like I was an out of body. Because my mom had become my best friend. Even though she embarrassed me when I was little, I loved my mama. She became like my close friend. As she was going through the trials of the divorce and with my dad, I would hold my mom's hand. I'd take her to work. We'd sing hymns together, Christian hymns. You know, she didn't say much because she didn't speak fluent in English, and I didn't speak much Korean, but we loved each other. I remember just going home and just distraught, thinking, how's life going to be without my best friend? I remember going to the funeral and it was packed out. We had hundreds and hundreds of people in there. And you know what? My dad didn't even show up. It reproved it to me, he's just not worth hanging out with. The guy has no hope. So anger was still there. I had learned to suppress it. And what's unusual, or not unusual, what's normal for a lot of us is we can be Christians, you can be elders, you can be pastors, you can be spiritual leaders, and you can act like everything's cool, but you have anger still. You have hostility, you have unforgiveness towards someone of another political party, to how people are acting that are sinning to you. For whatever reason, you act like everything is cool, but the truth is, if you get triggered, watch out. Same, that's what was happening with me. I remember going back to school and just thinking, my dad, I can't believe he didn't show up. I mean, they were married for so long. I was walking across the field late at night on the campus, and I remember so vividly, I heard God's voice. I heard, Dave, you need to forgive your father. I remember just responding right away, not thinking it was odd to hear God's voice. I just said, I can't. I just can't. Because I have no feelings for my dad. If anybody knows relationships, when you still have anger, there's still hope. When you have no feelings and there's apathy, that's the closest place to, like, it's being done. It's just over. I had no feelings. As soon as I said that, I have no feelings for him. I can't. You know what I heard? Dave, do you think my son felt like going to the cross? And I said, dang it. Dang it. Oh my gosh. Oh. Okay. I get it. I literally, even though I didn't feel like it, I called my dad the next day and said, Dad, I need to talk to you and his new wife, Carolyn. And he goes, what? I go, yeah, I'll tell you later, but can I just see you when I come home for Christmas? He goes, yeah. I fly home, I meet with them in their apartment in Phoenix. I sit down at the kitchen table, and they're probably ready for me just to unleash all this venomous hate for years worth of anger towards him, my dad. But then I look at my dad and say, Dad, I need to apologize. I haven't been a very good son. Would you please forgive me? He was stunned. With tears in his eyes, said, Dave, would you also forgive me? I've messed up, and of course I would forgive you. I looked at Carolyn. I said the same thing. Now, after that moment, that day, I'd love to tell you that suddenly it was like Disneyland. The music was playing, the bluebirds are flying in circles, and it was all wonderful. But honestly, it was work. It was hard to call my dad. I didn't want to. But I really believe the Bible that if I keep showing grace, even though I don't feel like it, because Jesus, it says, even in the midst of suffering, he still had joy. It wasn't that he loved the suffering. He endured suffering and shame, it said. So I said, okay, as I'm doing this, God, I'm just trusting that someday, some way, I'm gonna feel it. It took over 5 years of just seeing my dad every month or trying to talk to him. But I still had like this hatred a little bit for Carolyn because I thought she also had a big part in it, and I never got to really tell her how I felt. But as things were calming down, and at least I could see my dad over 5 years, we started getting closer. I went to Bangkok, and my dad would hit 65. His dream at 65 was to retire. And at 65, that year he called me when I was in Bangkok with my family. He said, Dave, I need to let you know something. I said, what is it, Dad? He said, well, I got cancer. I got leukemia. I flew home, and I got back there to the hospital, and I saw my dad was gonna die. And he says, hey, I got something to ask of you. Again, I was restoring my relationship with my dad. Things were getting better, but he goes, I got something big I need to ask of you. I go, what is it? He goes, well, if I do die, I have one request. Would you take care of Carolyn? She has a son. I didn't say this. She has a son. She has family. So my reason was, what are you thinking? But suddenly it was weird. It's like I saw my mom in heaven smiling because she has perfect peace and perfect forgiveness. And I think she would want me to actually love Carolyn. And I said, Dad, I'll do it. If that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. Several months later or so, my dad finally was on his last leg. Everybody had evacuated the room. I was the only one in the room with my dad. Morphine drip was happening, so he's in his last moments. But right before that, the drip started happening. He says, hey, can you come over here and help me up? And he goes, give me your arm. And my dad was pretty strong. He grabbed my arm, he pulled himself up, and he turned his body over to the other side toward the window where I was sitting so he could face me. And so we're just sitting there quietly in the darkness of the room. We just looking at each other. And I saw my dad breathe his last breath. What's left after that was Carolyn. So I started meeting with Carolyn. I started calling Carolyn. I started asking God, help me to see Carolyn like you see Carolyn. It wasn't easy. But it got to the point as I put her into a retirement home because she wouldn't come to our house. She says, I don't want to go to your house and bother you. I really seriously put me into a house here in Phoenix. We put her in a really luxury place. But I would see her fly from California to her house. And I would spend time with her, listen to her, pray with her. I bring her, she loves like M&Ms. I bring her pounds of M&Ms. I even brought her like a Paris baguette Korean cake. Of course, in memory of my mom. Well, finally, about a year ago, Carolyn also died. And when she died, I looked toward the heaven and I said, Dad, I fulfilled my promise. This is a really hard time in America. We're getting angrier and angrier. It's a dystopian moment. The nation, what you're seeing, are symptoms of family and smaller churches and congregations that are not getting along. It's just a symptom, what you're seeing on TV, of the reality that we all deal with in our cities. How do we transcend this? You don't have to agree or even like the other person, but to move towards the way Jesus is, this greatest miracle, it often starts with forgiveness. It's love that never stops. And before I go, we often think about the person we need to forgive, right? And we need to forgive them and make efforts to try to show love even though we don't feel like it. But you know what I realized? There's somebody here, the one you're not forgiving is yourself. And you condemn yourself. And you can't play all in because you keep condemning yourself because of what you've done. It's just too dirty, it's just too bad. It's too public. And I want to remind you once again, God sees you, He knows you, He keeps chasing after you. It says in Romans 5:8, but while we were yet in sin, Christ died for us. So may the love of God flow through each of you today. May you have no shame, because He didn't come to give you shame. He came to give you grace. No matter what you've done, what you're doing, or what you will do, His love, like a waterfall, keeps coming down. Unstoppable, beautiful love. So may you experience that love. May it give you chills in your body. May it heal you of all the toxic and all the slime that you received from even generations before in Korea or other nations. And may you know this love, because this love will set you free. Experience the most supernatural thing this world ever has to offer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.